The first day of the siege of Elmshore had been, as far as Sergeant Ruther could remember, quiet. The two companies of the 1st Company, 4th Regiment of the Imperial Army, stationed at Elmshore in the borderlands between the Northlands and the Kingdom of Arduin, were supposed to be ready for any eventuality, but so far the only thing that had happened was that the 200 soldiers stationed at Elmshore had received orders to maintain a defensive posture against a potential incursion by the Hessians. That's what they told us anyway, Ruther thought. The morning had begun with the sounds of distant thunder that had been following them since they'd left Arduin nearly a month ago. The storms had been a near-constant presence for the past 2 months, and the men who lived in this border region took them in stride. But they'd also learned not to be concerned when they heard distant thunder, as it usually meant that something more substantial was about to happen. Ruther stood with the rest of his company on the ramparts of Elmshore Castle and looked out at the rolling grasslands that stretched out for miles in front of him, just over the river. It was a beautiful day, the sun was out and there wasn't a cloud in sight. He took a sip from the tin cup he'd been given when he'd arrived at the fortress a week before. The water was cool and tasted vaguely of sulfur. He'd been assigned to the 3rd Company, 2nd Regiment, the same unit that Sergeant Tanner of the 5th Company had come from. The 1st Company, 4th Regiment was commanded by Colonel Birkin, and Ruther had been surprised to learn that the man was not an officer in the Imperial Army, but was instead one of the Arduinites who had joined with the Emperor after the conquest of his country. "I understand you're familiar with Colonel Birkin," Colonel Jackson had said when he'd been briefed on the assignment a few days before they left. "He's a native of Arduin who fought with us during the war." "Yes, sir," Ruther had replied. Jackson had continued, "You've probably already figured out that I don't have a lot of experience in this part of the world, and you're going to be my liaison with Colonel Birkin and his men, as well as keep me apprised of any developments here at Elmshore." "Yes, sir," Ruther had replied. "I assume that if Colonel Birkin's men are sent into the field, we'll accompany them." "That's right," Jackson had said. "I've been tasked with leading a brigade that will march north to assist our forces there in case the Hessians make it to the coast. Colonel Birkin's regiment will accompany me." "That's quite a long march, sir," Ruther had said. "Why are they going there rather than staying here?" Jackson had smiled at him and said, "You can see why I'm sending Birkin's men with us." Ruther had shrugged. "I'm not sure I follow you." Jackson had said, "In order to get here to Elmshore we had to cross over a bridge that had been destroyed by the Hessians. If Birkin's regiment is not going to be needed here, then we'll need to replace them with another regiment that can defend the bridge." "I suppose I understand that," Ruther had replied. "There's another thing you should know about Colonel Birkin and his men," Jackson had said. "What is that?" Ruther had asked. "Colonel Birkin is one of the men who believes that if the Hessians can reach the ocean and set up a beachhead there, then the war in our favor is over," Jackson said. "It's his opinion that if he and his men could cut the Hessian supply lines to the coast, then our troops on the front would be able to break free from their Hessian overlords." Ruther had said, "You don't share his opinion?" "I'm not sure I do," Jackson said. "The Hessians are good fighters, but I doubt they have enough men to hold all the territory they've taken." "Do you think they can make it to the coast?" Ruther had asked. Jackson had sighed and said, "It's impossible to say at this point. They're moving fast, but they haven't yet reached the sea, so we can hope that they will run out of steam before they make it there." Ruther didn't know how Colonel Jackson could say something like that so matter-of-factly. As far as Ruther could see, the Hessians had conquered a great deal of land in the last year, and half held most of it with only a fraction of their population. They had done so by training the native populations they'd taken under their heel to fight for them and by fighting alongside them to win their loyalty. The Hessian soldiers were highly trained and well-armed, and they seemed to be everywhere. Even if the Hessians couldn't hold their conquests, they were certainly making it very difficult for the Empire to retake the land.